Hey, welcome back. I don't usually do a video about firmware updates, but I think this one is very significant. It's either significant because it's a huge improvement, or it's significant because it's a huge disappointment. Either way, that's something to talk about, right? So I spent one full shoot using the Z9 with the firmware 4.10, and I paired that with the Nikon Z 600mm f4 TC-VRS lens. I did almost all the shooting in auto area AF with bird subject detection. My attempts to use 3D with bird has yet to prove worthwhile, so I'm going to come back to that later. I tried to find a variety of bird subjects to test with, but nature gives you what it gives you. Still, I had everything from tree swallows to sandhill cranes. Pretty wide variety. Before I dive into showing you the footage I recorded and some of the photos I took, I want to explain what my personal expectation was and is for this upgrade. The biggest autofocus challenges I've had with birds has been when they're not terribly large in the frame and there's low contrast background. Sandhill cranes at a distance of 100 yards or more, blending into the background. This is a big challenge. But the AF found them okay, and when it went into DX mode, it was even able to identify the head and lock on. In FX mode, the body was the best I could do, and there just wasn't enough detail at that distance. Too far for photos, but it made for a good test. Some nearby ducks in the mud provided big challenges. As you can see, the system's hunting and sometimes grabbing the vegetation instead. Geese in flight in the open sky, clearly no challenge at all, just shown here for comparison purposes. This common gallinule, backed up against the tall grass and reeds, is usually an autofocus nightmare. It found him okay, but it liked the reflection better than the bird sometimes. In this case, I don't think that really matters, but it would be nice to see the logic improved for that frequent condition. Going to DX mode here didn't seem to make much difference. This mute swan swimming behind tall grass produced interesting results. I was impressed how well the box stayed locked on the bird. Even small birds, some at a distance, are grabbed quickly in most cases. There can be some confusion with multiple subjects, but you usually are able to select your preference. And note this quick transition back to the gallinule. So this one, in flight and badly obscured, was tracked very well, good enough to get this shot. But it's not magic. In low contrast with fast-moving birds, the system is still going to struggle sometimes. And it's going to bounce to reflections sometimes. But watch it find these grebes among tall watergrass in poor light conditions. It takes some work, but it gets them. Black bird with black eyes. It easily finds the head and even the eye. And when it gets it, it's super sticky. It even identified this bird with tail feathers toward me. But there are some that it just can't manage. And now to a big challenge. Fast, erratic birds, quickly varying distances, and rapidly changing backgrounds. This is the real-life challenge of wildlife photography for many birds in flight. I'm going to let this footage run and just let you watch the performance in real time. I like to track these birds even when they're too far for a shot because the distance can change in a heartbeat, and I like to have a lock on them. What you're seeing here is much better performance and stickiness than I was getting prior to 4.1. As I will keep saying, it's not magic, but it felt like my hit count was way up, maybe even doubled. This lets me concentrate on keeping the subject in the frame, working the composition, and firing when the action breaks, instead of constantly trying to regain focus and missing a lot of shots. It really helps to allow you to be the photographer and pick the right moment for the shot, not just spray and pray. This flock of yellowlegs were busy feeding and moving around and made great little subjects. Look at the lock it gets and keeps on the eyes, even with the intense activity in the head movements. Even flying straight toward the camera, it keeps a tight lock on the bird. This is where I used to miss a lot of shots due to AF failure. Bottom line is that the Firmware 4.1 upgrade is a legit improvement for bird photography. On the ground, in the water, or in the air, it's locking on and staying with them much better than it ever has. I used a coincidental opportunity to quickly check out the airplane AF mode too, even though I've used it and tested it thoroughly in the Z8, as I demonstrated before. The small plane never did have its cockpit or nose toward me, but it still grabbed it and held it just fine. So as far as firmware update 4.1, I'd still like to see some improvements in the logic for reflections, as this is an ongoing common issue. I don't really expect miracles with birds in tough contrast conditions, fast-moving, busy backgrounds, but it is much better than it was before. Enough so to say that I think it takes the Z9 to another level of performance for bird photography. I'm Dave, this is Nights and Weekends, and I'll see you again soon.